growing up, my dad always told me you do what makes you happy. I'm fascinated by every little country, every city in every country. Sometimes I find myself dozing off at work by going on Google Maps and Street View on a random city in the random country. And I just think it's so interesting.
How do we get someone that's not interested in anything to say, yeah, actually I am interested in that. Let me pursue this.
If someone came up to you, Jack, and said, your blue hair looks shitty, are you going to get mad? No, you don't have blue hair.
Do you seek wealth?
Um,
So the theme that I thought of today when I was, actually before today, but the theme that I thought of when I wanted to talk with you was specifically that. You're like the freaking Dos Equis commercial. You're the most interesting man in the world. You have all these interests. What is his name? Who's the guy who wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People? I'm blanking. But anyway, one of his quotes is, in order to be interesting, be interested. What makes you so interested in all these things? And what are you interested in?
I would say my main interests are music, particularly playing guitar, but just listening to music in general. Music and traveling are the two biggest. And then there's food and cooking. I like cooking. I prefer going out to eat, but I cook all the time because it's more practical and it saves more money. So cooking and then fitness. So those I think are the main four. And then of course there's hanging out with friends and stuff. If you consider that, I think that's important, but it's not necessarily my top hobby. I'll always pick these four over, kind of social things, sometimes to a fault. But those are the four things that I feel like make up myself. What was the other part of the question?
Why? What makes you so interested?
Yeah. So growing up, my dad always told me you do what makes you happy, and that for some reason just always stuck with me. And then even all the music I started listening to, that was always, I feel like, a general message of all the music I listened to, and it was kind of just ingrained in me. So when I started playing guitar so much, it made me happy. So that was when I started playing guitar. That was my only hobby. So I would do it for 5 hours a night. I was 13. I didn't have anything to do. So I kind of pushed out video games of my life and just played guitar from then on. And then I just never really lost interest because I just find it so fascinating. There are endless possibilities with what you can do on the guitar or on any instrument, really, just with music in general. There's endless possibilities.
What is so attractive about endless possibilities as opposed to having parameters around something?
I guess that's a really good question. You can do something great, I guess, is one thing. You can inspire people the way those people who have done something new and great inspired you. So that's kind of one of my things with guitar. I want to inspire people the way I've been inspired, and whether that be through new ways of playing guitar or new ways of showing your emotions through the guitar or music in general. I keep saying guitar, but I mean music in general. That's what's fascinating to me about endless possibilities. There's always something new and there's always something different, I think that's what's pretty cool. But compared to something like traveling, which is my other favorite thing, is there really endless possibilities? Not really. The world's kind of finite, There's only so many places you can go. But for someone like me, I don't know anybody who's traveled to every place in the world.
Right.
So it is almost endless because you could travel every day for the rest of your life and not visit everything, So I guess technically there aren't really parameters, but there are at the same time.
How many countries out of the world have you visited? How many are there? Is it 193?
It's debatable.
China might have something to say about that.
China's entered the chat. I usually say 193 to 196, something like that.
Okay.
I've visited, I want to say 20 to 22-ish.
And your goal is to visit every single one in the world?
That'd be really great. I can't say it's my number one goal. If I ever get to a position where I can travel full time, that's going to be my goal.
Okay.
But right now, it's not really my goal. I think it'd be really cool. I'm fascinated by every little country, every city in every country. Sometimes I find myself dozing off at work by going on Google Maps and Street View on a random city in the random country. And I just think it's so interesting.
Does that fascination also stem from your dad telling you to do what you want, or always do what you love to do, or is that fascination coming from somewhere else?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I've been always a curious person, curious child. My favorite thing to do when I was young was ask why. So growing up a little bit, like in history class throughout grade school, I could never pay attention to this boring stuff. And I would always read ahead to like the spots that interest me, especially like world news or world history. So the spots I would flip to like, I don't know, the World War II section or the Cold War section of the Cold War era, and read about some of the other countries, some of the other dictators and politics going on in those times. And I just like could never pay attention in actual class because I was so interested in like these other places rather than just what's going on here or happen here and, you know, before 1700. Like that was never interesting to me. So like I always was interested in other places for some reason.
Interesting.
And that's just really translated to now like I like traveling and I prefer traveling outside the U.S. I do love traveling in the U.S., don't get me wrong. But that I love, and international is so different, and that's what I crave is the different cultures, the foods, the people, the language.
That novelty. It's almost like there is endless possibility, at least in your mind, in the way that you might interpret it. There's endless possibilities in other cultures and things that you can discover.
I mean, like take like languages for example. They're endless because like English, you could never read all the books in the world, and then say you read a comfortable amount and you're like, I want to move on to the next language. Do you know how many languages there are and how many books in each language you could read? I mean, the knowledge out there is endless. And so like take that just languages and apply it to the whole culture. You know, the food of every culture, endless. You know what I mean? There's endless recipes in French cuisine that I will never, ever learn all of.
That novelty like that we seek is such a superpower to have. Like when I look at you, I think like you have the superpower of being interested in things and seeking that novelty. Like my life purpose, I feel like, is I want to figure out how to instill that in other people because it seems like there's so many people, maybe even the majority of people that have like stopped seeking novelty in some sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you have any? What do you think about that?
I think it's great, and I guess it kind of goes back to what I was saying with music. Like I want to inspire people the way I've been inspired. It's kind of the same thing. Inspire the novelty of wanting to listen to all this different music and get inspiration from everywhere. I want to inspire other people to do that. You know, I want to open other people's mind up to be able to do these things. You know, don't just listen to the two genres you've always listened to for your whole life. I want to open you up to listen to all this, or open you up to visiting every country, not just a resort down in the Caribbean, or trying all these foods, not just these foods and some European foods, you know?
How do you do that? How do we get someone that's not interested in anything to say, yeah, actually I am interested in that. Let me pursue this.
It's a good question. And I actually think in this day and age, it's the easiest, obviously, because of social media,
most access.
Internet. Right. Everybody has the most access to this stuff. But I think it goes back to like the content creation. I think it's a great way to get people interested. And I think that's why I've become so interested in like, I've been able to make a list of all these recipes I want to try from different cultures, a list of all these cities I want to go to, countries I want to go to that I've seen just on social media, whether it be YouTube or Instagram or Facebook or something like that. And that's, I feel like, how I've seen or heard of, or, you know, all these new things to look at or try. So I think that's, and books as well. Definitely books.
Do you seek wealth? Do you seek status?
Not necessarily. I seek happiness more than anything. And it's hard to have, well, for what I want in life, it would be hard to have happiness without a little bit of wealth. You know, traveling requires a little bit of wealth. Music, not necessarily. Maybe some startup costs to get nice equipment to keep me satisfied. Traveling is probably the most thing that would require wealth. So I guess, yes, I do acquire or want to acquire wealth eventually. I'd say right now, it's not necessarily my goal. I could put all my energy into that, but that would take away from travel right now when I want to travel right now. You know what I mean? I'd rather put my money towards traveling than put it towards a business that I could build right now, because I can only travel when I'm young for now. And I don't know if that business is going to take me 1 year to build and then I can travel, or 25 years. Because I don't want to travel when I'm 45.
Why not?
Because I want to travel now. And it's kind of a fault a little bit, I think. I know I'm confident that I'll be healthy when I'm 45, but I still would much rather travel now while I'm young and can do these things. I'm already feeling the effects of age hit me a little bit, you know. Not that I'm
the joints.
Not that I'm big on drinking and partying,
yeah,
but if I were to go drinking and partying, I can feel the effect the next day much more than I could have 4 years ago.
In the last maybe 2 years, like I started getting full day hangovers. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, yo, this was only supposed to last for like an hour in the morning, bro. What the fuck?
Yeah.
How would you define happiness? Is there a universal definition for happiness, or is it subjective to each person?
It's definitely subjective to each person. But also what's subjective is what makes the person happy. So I would say that the definition of happiness is subjective and different for each person. But also, like I just said, whatever makes them happy. And I think they kind of work in conjunction.
Okay.
I have no better way to explain it.
There's no definition that we could practically come up with.
Right.
And for you, it's traveling. What is the happiness within traveling and the happiness within music?
Traveling, a little easier to answer than music. I love seeing new people, different people. They look different, they dress different, they sound different, they speak different words, they eat different foods. Like, that is so interesting to me. Or the cities look different, the architecture, having public transport, or just how many people are walking in the city. I think that is so cool to see. I think I already said the food, the nature. Every mountain is different, I don't know. Beaches are a little different. I'm not big on beaches. I'm more big on mountains, but every landscape is different in general. And like, there's different landscapes all over the world, endless. Some people think like Colorado looks the exact same as the mountains in the Alps or something, when no, I feel like they're all different. So there's always something different to see. And then the same thing for music. Everything is different. There's endless amounts of genres and subgenres of every type of music you could think of. There's always something for everybody.
That's interesting. It's almost like you have to, I don't know how to articulate this correctly, but you almost have to know the details of something to truly appreciate, them. I mean, that's almost sounds super obvious when I say that out loud, but to your point about the Alps, people might say the Alps look similar as the Rocky Mountains. Yeah, and then to the all-encompassing theme of being interested in things. When you're interested in things, you can get down to those details and you can actually start to appreciate things more.
Right. Yeah, it's absolutely true.
You said some of your, maybe to a fault, your top 4 favorite things might sacrifice your relationships a little bit with friends or whatever it may be.
Yeah, a little bit.
Tell me more about that.
I think there's a trap when it comes to productivity, and not everybody can fall into this trap. But if you try to be like, I'm going to be super productive, sometimes it's so overwhelming, especially when I have so many hobbies. Like, I could go home right now and want to cook dinner, practice guitar for 2 hours, and then read a little bit in the book I'm reading. But sometimes all the things I want to do are overwhelming, and I become trapped on like, what do I do? And then sometimes you just freeze a little bit. So I've had this issue a couple times before, and like, one of the worst times was after I got back from Europe last year, and it was the day I got back, and I was just like, I felt so trapped. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to act. It's almost like I forgot what life was like after traveling for 2.5 weeks. So I was kind of trapped in this productivity thing. Like, I wanted to do all these things so bad that I didn't get any of it done. And that day was just kind of a wash. And sometimes I get like that a little bit, because I want to be so productive and work on all my hobbies at once that it's hard to pick one or the other, something like that. So that's happened a couple times, and sometimes I choose those hobbies over going out and hanging out with friends. So that's also been one of my problems. But I'm also not the biggest fan of going out to a bar or going out to a club. So it makes it hard for me to want to go out with my friends when that's all we're going to do. I don't want to go spend money and part of the thing with spending money for me, I don't want to go spend money because that drink is money that could have gone towards traveling. So sometimes that kind of equation in my brain goes a little too far, and it's like, okay, I can have a little bit of fun. Well, I can get 1 drink a month or something like that.
Do you have a friend group that, or friends or people that are interested in like the same hobbies as you, as like music? Like, if someone do you have people that around you that will say, yeah, let's go jam on the guitar a little bit, or hell yeah, let's go to Japan, I don't care?
A little bit. So like music, not as much. I have very little friends or people that share the same music taste as me. So like my music taste is like a conglomeration of my brother's music taste and my other brother's music taste. So I share most of my music with them and my cousin who lives in Kansas City. That's the extent almost entirely of like my in-depth music taste. And then I have friends who listen to a lot of the other genres that I listen to. So most of the music I listen to is covered by at least one or two people that I can share it with. But in general, like I don't have a lot of people that I can share it with. Same for like traveling. I don't have a lot of people that I don't want to say want to travel, but will travel. Everybody wants to travel, but not everybody wants to put the effort towards traveling. There's not a lot there either. My fiance, for one, she likes traveling and we always make it work. There's a few friends who like to do it, but it's hard to plan it with them, so it doesn't really happen much.
Do you think if you had friends that moved towards the same hobby, let's say a new person came into your life that participated in like jamming with you and you guys had similar music tastes and you guys were to be able to play together or travel together, would that relationship become closer sooner than your other relationships? Would it take precedence over your other friendships?
Probably. I would say yes.
What's more important in a friendship? The hobbies you share or the character traits? Or yeah, what's more important between
hobbies or the characteristics and traits? I think you have to find a happy medium for sure. To say one is more important, I think it's hard to say, and it's almost like comparing apples to oranges in a sense, because they are both important in different ways. You know, if I have someone who likes all my hobbies and we become good friends, but they have real shitty morals and they're a bad person, I probably wouldn't want to be friends with them. But I have a lot of friends who have really good morals and great characteristics, but I don't have any hobbies with. So I guess that technically could be an answer that characteristics is more important. Otherwise, I would probably have more friends with all the same hobbies and interests, I guess.
And this is not to say what you just said. This is like a general thing of, it's interesting because everyone who would answer that would say like, yeah, it's bad to hang around shitty people, right? Like, even though sometimes those are the shitty people.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I'm obviously not, don't think that of you, like, you know, because you're a friend of mine, but, I don't know if I had any conclusion to that or if it was just an observation, but it's interesting. Like, how do you, are shitty people also subjective, or is there objectively shitty people?
I think that's a really good question because I think there's objectively shitty people. I think in some cases, objectivity is subjective. You know, I could see like a politician who makes policies and say they're an objectively bad person. They're making bad policies, but someone will always find a way to rationalize it and not see them as a shitty person.
Right.
You know, like, you know, people idolized Joseph Stalin, for example. We all know he was not a good person, but people found a way to justify his actions and kind of see him as a good person. You see that a lot throughout history. So yeah, is objectivity ever not subjective? Especially in that sense, like 2 + 2 is 4. That's objective.
Well, technically, if you calculate the risk factor, do you believe in evil, good and evil?
Yeah, I guess, but it's subjective again. I think good and evil is subjective. What I see someone as good, someone else may see as not good. What I see, so someone is evil, they might think they're not evil. It just comes down to everybody's different morals and what they believe is right and wrong.
So could I argue then that evil does not exist from that answer? If it's always subjective, it seems like in order for something as serious as evil to exist, it has to be objective. Like, you know, we think of school shooters, or we think of you know, the worst people in the world, child molesters, whatever it may be. We want to pin them as evil, and it's almost like if I don't pin them as evil, I'm showing them empathy, and they don't deserve empathy. Calling someone evil is a good way to keep any type of empathy from them, right? I could have empathy for them and still think this person needs to be in jail and away from people for the rest of their lives. Right. They cannot be, you know, that doesn't mean that I should hate them. But if you have empathy, I actually just posted this on Instagram today. You cannot hate someone and understand someone at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's a great point.
yeah, I always struggle with that. Like, I personally don't think that evil exists, and I don't think that objectively good people exist.
Right.
But there is like a collective, form of people, like saving an innocent child's life. Like, we're all going to agree, yeah, that's good, except for maybe like a psychopath, right?
Yeah.
And then it becomes subjective. But it's a tough question. I don't know. Do you get into philosophy much? I mean, you have all kinds of interests.
Yeah, I do like philosophy. I took a couple philosophy classes throughout college, maybe 3 or 4. They were always interesting, and I would say philosophy is what I base my morals off of. Maybe not a particular philosophy, but I like to cite certain philosophies as sometimes where I get my morals. So I do like philosophy, and I think Stoicism in particular has helped me a lot become the way I am. Kind of like I'm a little toned down. I'm really get angry. I'm really good at like controlling my emotions and stuff like that, and seeing things from different perspectives and keeping myself under control. So I think Stoicism had a really big effect on like how I see the world.
What any specific lessons or general concepts from Stoicism that you've taken away?
You cannot control how other things react. You can only control how you react. That's the biggest one, of course. I just had another one in my head. That's definitely the biggest, like controlling your own reactions, and I think that's the core of Stoicism.
Dude, I get a boner for Stoicism.
Yeah,
man, I could talk about it all day.
It's great. I mean, just that alone is enough of a lesson for like an entire philosophy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean,
I think the other one that's helped me a lot is like, don't worry about what other people think of you. It was one. There was like a king, and I read it in one of the
Marcus Aurelius.
It wasn't him. It might have been him. It was
Roman emperor.
Yeah, it was a Roman emperor. I'm not sure if it was Aurelius or not, but he walked outside of his palace and someone like dumped water on him or something and said, "You're like a terrible person." And he didn't get mad because he himself knows he's not a terrible person. This person sees him as a terrible person, but he's not actually seeing him. You know what I mean? He's seeing a version of himself that doesn't really exist, And like, yeah, it's kind of hard.
Yeah.
Kind of hard to visualize, but people don't think bad things of you when they don't, or they only think bad things of you when they don't know you. You know what I mean? Then they get to know you, and why did I think that? Unless you're an objectively bad person, and then they might always think those things. But like, I think 99% of the time when people think or like talk shit on you or say something bad about you, they don't know you.
They're talking shit on the idea of you.
Exactly, that's it. The idea of you. And like I saw some reel on Instagram recently of someone like giving a speech, and he's like, if someone came up to you, Jack, and said, "Your blue hair looks shitty," are you gonna get mad? No, you don't have blue hair. If someone comes up and says, "You're an asshole," a lot of people would get mad. But in your heart, you're not an asshole. I don't even know you, so why am I going to get mad over that?
That's a fucking, I've never heard that before, and I love that. Hey, Ricky, your blue hair is fucking shit.
Thank you.
I don't have blue hair. That's
right. So as long as you know yourself and you're comfortable with yourself, then you're able to not care what other people think, because these people don't actually know me or like get to know me on a deeper spiritual level,
How comfortable are you with yourself?
Pretty comfortable. I mean, everybody's going to have like insecurities and stuff like that, but I'd say I'm really comfortable with myself.
What insecurities would you say you have now?
I've always been insecure about my eyebrows. They grow like rapid fire. So I just trimmed them today. I usually do it like once a week, or my fiance will like, what's it called? Wax them a little bit.
It's good. Don't mean to cut you off, but the insecurity that you have around that. So what does it mean to Ricky to have crazy eyebrows? Why does that make you insecure?
I don't know. I guess it feels out of control. It doesn't look, I don't know. I don't think it looks good. It's not how I want to portray myself, that I just let my eyebrows grow and like I get hair like all up there and like all, But I can own my insecurity and talk about it.
Right.
I think that's a great trait to have as well. Be able to talk about your insecurities and show how you kind of get past them and work on them. And I think talking about your insecurities helps work
Yeah.
past them as well.
I've like, another thing, like I've always talked about Jack on this podcast a million times about like he is the king of like exposing his insecurities to take the power away from them,
Yeah.
Yeah, it builds up the armor, but also when you're willing to talk about it, it's almost like you're healing that in the moment when you're talking about it with other people and you're exposing it to other people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's something that I started working on after he and I had, grown close.
And that too is a superpower. Being able to talk about and be comfortable with your insecurities, I think it's a great thing. Not a lot of people have that trait, I don't think.
Is that, you've got a fiance now, Taylor?
Yeah.
25 years old? Are you guys, are you 25?
24.
She's 23?
23.
Okay. So on the subject of, talking about your insecurities to people, and we're talking about someone that becomes your fiance, has to be someone very, very close to you, obviously. 23 years old, 24 years old, getting married.
Mm-hmm.
How did that happen?
Well, we've been best friends for, I don't know how many years now, since 2015 probably. So that's 8 years now. It's 2023. So we became good friends in high school. And then I guess when I was studying abroad in Australia, we got real close, or closer and talking every day. And I would say that's when we kind of developed feelings for each other. I came home from Australia and we planned a trip to Portugal. And that's when we really started talking. She's like, oh, I want to travel with you. And I was like, okay, well, I want to go do this. And so we went and did it. And then we started talking more and hanging out more. And then we were dating. And then, when you start dating your best friend, you skip, I think, a year or two of your relationship of getting to know each other. You know what I mean? Because most people, they meet someone, you have to get to know them a little bit. Then you say, okay, I'll try dating you. And then you get to know them for however long until you feel comfortable to marry them. Sometimes that's a year, sometimes that's 4, 7 years, But for us, we had been best friends. I knew all of her secrets. She knew all of my secrets. I mean, seriously, she knew everything and I knew everything about her. So there wasn't really any wall between us. So now we've been dating for over 3 years, and I did propose in November, and now is just under 3 years into our relationship.
Wow. So
that's how that happened. I don't think there's a magic age you need to wait until or wait for. It's just whenever you're ready, and when you know, you know. That's what I always tell people. When you know, you know.
How do other people, date and marry their best friend? How do they get to that?
It's hard and scary. Believe me, like there's a big fear of, you have this best friend and you don't want to lose them. You start to develop feelings for this person. And it's like, okay, now what? Because it's like a crossroads. Because like either you go down the path, like you tell them, and then there's another crossroads. So if you don't tell them, then pretty much nothing's ever going to happen and you're going to not be happy. And maybe you'll get over your feelings for them and life can go on, or maybe you won't get over those feelings and nothing will ever happen and you'll, lose that happiness that you could get. Or you tell them and then either they like you back or they don't. If they don't, it's kind of like the same path there. You kind of have to get over it. Or if they do, then you're good. So it's like the chances are a little slimmer when that happens. So I'll admit, like when we were starting to become closer and talking a lot, I was nervous as hell. Like I didn't want to lose like one of these really good friends, because like if I made a move and she didn't want to reciprocate, and then things could get weird or maybe just wouldn't be the exact same, I wouldn't want that. Luckily, it just happened to work out. So like if someone likes somebody and it's their best friend, I always think they should just tell them. Like, I mean, it's the oldest saying in the world, but there's plenty of fish in the sea, but it's true. There's always, unfortunately, I mean, it either works or it doesn't. If it doesn't, just get over it. And it's easier said than done. Believe me, it's really, really hard to get over. But
what's the biggest risk you've ever taken in your life?
I think it was studying abroad the first time. Because I studied abroad twice, once in France, the next semester in Australia. So the first time in France, I think it was a big step for me. I wasn't fluent in French. I'm still not necessarily fluent in French, but I'm much better than I was then.
Parlez français?
Yeah, I'd taken it in high school and then college a little bit, and then I went on to France. And then I lived with a host family, so it was great French practice. Unfortunately, all my classes were they were in English. So I didn't get really, I don't know, it was an international program, which I didn't really know going in. So it wasn't maximized for my French language skills, but
that's indicative of who you are. Just to point out, like, unfortunately, they were all in English.
Yeah,
most people would be like, "Oh, thank fucking
I know."
God.
Like, I wanted to learn the language, but that was a huge step for me. Flying, no one in my family has ever really traveled. A little bit, but never outside the U.S. So, like, that was a huge step for me to go into this foreign land where they speak a different language, eat different foods. I didn't have as acquired of a taste for food at that point as I do now. So that was a big step for me. I was a little more of a picky eater than I was now. So that was one thing. Putting myself out there has always been hard. So that was a big step for that as well.
Putting yourself out there, how so?
Being able to talk to people and do these things. I guess just, I don't know, figuring out life. I was still a little young. I was 19 at the time. And like, I had to figure out a life in a different country. Like here, if I need to start my life and go open like a bank account and go do this and this and this all by myself, I could do it. But doing it in a different language was tough. I had to go open a bank account and open a gym membership and figure out when I have to cancel the gym membership without paying extra fees, And I had to do that all the first 2 weeks on a language that I wasn't fluent in. And so it was a big challenge, and it was really far out of my comfort zone. I mean, I was terrified. It was hard. And then, not only that, I didn't have any friends. I didn't know one person in that city. I was in Lyon, France. Not a single person. So I had to meet all new people. It made it a little easier that it was in English. Again, like the international group was people from all over the world. So unfortunately, I didn't get to make a lot of like French friends. A lot of them were from different parts of the world. So it's like Europe, Canada, Asia. So, but yeah, not having friends and going across the world was hard. A lot of people who went to SLU went to the Madrid SLU campus, and it's the actual SLU campus. So they knew a lot of people there. They had friends going. So I don't want to discredit what they did, but it was almost like easy mode compared to mine was maybe medium mode, or it was just the next step up because I didn't know anybody and I needed another language, whereas they maybe didn't need Spanish as much as I needed French. Maybe. I don't want to discredit anybody's experience.
I get what you're saying. Did it, that was probably like a transcendent moment for you. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah. I always like, that is the moment that time changed my life. Like 2019 on, like I feel like I'm a completely different person. From January 1st, 2019, that's when I left St. Louis. I just feel like I'm a completely different person in every way possible. Now that I can, do these things, go travel and do whatever I want in any other country comfortably, I can say that I can do that now.
Throughout our entire life, we'll probably go through many different versions of ourselves. How many versions of yourself have you gone through?
I guess if you want to count like the young version, me as a kid until 15, I would say is one version. And then 15 until then, and then now. So I'd say that I'm on my third version.
Third version?
Yeah, my third software update's been uploaded now. Yeah.
When you're creating a new version of yourself, let's say for people trying to create new versions of themselves, what are some indicators that they're doing a good job of, transcending themselves?
If they're happy, I mean, it's sometimes hard to tell as a third person. Like if I look at that person and say like, oh, they look happy, they're doing a good job. It's really hard to say. But that's only one that you can know yourself. Sometimes you can see it. Sometimes like we can meet up with an old friend and see that, hey, they're doing really good, compared to them. I knew them a few years ago. They're probably doing a good job of making their new version of themselves. But it's hard to find like a good indication besides like, oh, they're happy. Sometimes maybe the way they talk, maybe they have a different attitude the way they talk now compared to like what you knew of them before. Different ways of thinking. Maybe they do different hobbies. They don't do bad hobbies, I guess, or it's kind of hard to say.
Yeah, it is hard to say. It's like we're ignorant to what we're ignorant to, right?
Yeah.
it's so hard to change. It's so simple to change, but it's so hard.
It is. Everybody gets stuck in their ways.
Yeah.
And you have to take a step to change, a big step normally, but sometimes you can take baby steps, of course, but.
And it's, it's almost like sometimes you're on the path and it's going to require an outside influence to help you. And some people don't have that option. That actually, that's one of those things that like makes me question free will, between free will and determinism. It's like, if this person was destined to never have someone come into their life to change their course, how can I say they had the free will of everything that they did? If you are ignorant to what you are ignorant to, I think we can look at that in hindsight and say, well, they should have done this, they should have done this, but they were ignorant to what they were ignorant to. So why are we deeming them as making poor decisions when they're ignorant to their own poor decisions?
Right. I mean, I guess kind of what I'm getting from what you said is like people make the decisions that they think is best at the time, in a sense, because they didn't know what other decisions could be made. They're ignorant to it. Right. And I think that again can be subjective. Take a politician, for example. They could vote yes or no on something and know there is no necessarily right decision, or they know something might be the better decision, but they might have interests in saying this, even though it might be subjectively the wrong decision or something along those lines. Does that kind of make sense?
They could be voting in a way for maybe ulterior motives.
Yeah.
Or
even though they know, like, hey, this is probably the right decision, but I'm getting donations from them that's pushing me to do this, I'm not saying that happens all the time in politics, but
sure.
I think most people agree that it does.
And
not that I have proof or anything.
There's this sneaky thing that we have in all of our brains that allows us to trick ourselves into thinking that we will come up with reasons of why, okay, actually this is why this is a good thing. Actually, this is, even though I'm taking donations from these people and I'm voting, not morally correct on this one. Actually, though, these are the reasons why I should be taking money from them. We trick ourselves into thinking and making, decisions righteous.
Yeah. I think it's a good point. They have been, I don't know, indoctrined by these donations and their beliefs to believe this, even though it's not true,
Yep.
So maybe they do, in a sense, they do think they're making the right decision because of how they've been indoctrinated. So it comes back to your point. There you go.
It's survivor bias, right?
Yeah.
It's, people who worked for, name a company that is under fire.
Any pharmaceutical company or the big oil, right?
Big oil, right. Like, if you ask every single person in the big oil field, like, is this unethical? Most of them are going to say, no, these are the reasons why. And then you ask an environmentalist, and let's say for some instance, that environmentalist has to go work at a large oil rig. They eventually are going to convince themselves of why. Yeah. If their paycheck depends on it, they're going to convince themselves of why the oil business is actually okay.
Most likely, right.
And that's probably, it's another thing of ignorance. It's like, okay, and also being in that industry, they are actually learning more about the industry to where maybe there is a logical reason.
Black and white, you know? And I think, like, a lot of people can't, like, put themselves in that position or, like, see themselves in another position to be able to do that. So, for example, like, nothing in life is ever black and white.
Right.
So for that example, or like, let's take the rich, for example. Everybody hates the rich. But guess what? If I was rich, I would be avoiding taxes too. You're saving millions of dollars at that point, like, why wouldn't I take advantage of these perfectly legal ways to not pay taxes,
Right.
So it's easy to hate on the rich, but at the same time, like, of course I might have some animosity towards the rich, but I'm not going to hate them for what they're doing. You shouldn't hate the rich people, hate the policies that allow them to do that.
Don't hate the player, hate the game.
Right. But at the same time, if I was that player, I'd probably do it. You know what I mean? So
anyone would.
So I'm not going to say I hate the rich. Not that I love the rich or I'm going to stand up for them, but I think in general, you shouldn't hate anybody or anything without being able to look at, be in their position,
You can't hate someone and understand them at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Full circle.
Woohoo, call back. All right. Sick.
You really can't.
Yeah. It's, the way that we look at it's, I don't know. We will always have animosity towards things we don't understand. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. you know, some of the, like, my family members and people I'm around, like, they literally cannot comprehend, like, being rich, you know? Like, if I talk about getting rich, or, like, they're like, oh, yeah, you'll be rich, Jack. But it's like and I don't want to speak for them, and I don't want to, you know, say something negative, but
Yeah.
they don't really believe, you know, they don't truly, like, see, oh, wow, we're going to be, like, living in a lake house someday,
Yeah.
you know, like, and I'm like, to me, it's like, no, you guys are going to be living in, I'm going to retire you. You're going to be taken care of. And not that they need to or should, and not that they're bad parents because they can't believe that. But I think it really, my point was, it speaks to our perceptions of things, of, like, we can't even put ourselves in that place.
Right.
What do you, when you are a wealthy person, when, not if,
Yeah.
so the first thing you're going to do is travel?
Yeah. I mean, I'll probably pay off debts and, you know, settle a few things, you know, make sure all my bills are going to get paid, and maybe the house is being looked after, or like rent it out or something like that, and build a little more wealth. But
what's your course to becoming wealthy right now?
I don't know. Right now, I think my career with Dogtown Pizza is the best path I could be on right now. Because I have a lot of flexibility. It's a family business, so I can take 2 months off and go travel if I want. That won't be paid necessarily. You know, I only have so many paid days. But like, I have a lot of flexibility, and I'm building a really nice career with learning a lot of different things with what I do on a day-to-day basis. So like, after Dogtown Pizza, everybody's like, oh, you're going to take over the business? No, I don't really want to do that necessarily, because I don't want to get stuck in St. Louis forever. But after Dogtown Pizza, I'll have experience working on equipment. I'll have experience doing sort of data analytics, and then like general management experience of, like, you know, upper management decisions on how we're going to move forward with a product line or this or that. So with those three things, I could go into 3 different things in different parts of the country or different parts of the world. You know, for part of what I do right now, working on the equipment, like, I could go work for Anheuser-Busch and get like a really nice paying job, you know, after Dogtown Pizza, and that could be my career. You know, I kind of have open to pick whatever path, a bunch of different paths right now.
That skill acquisition opens up
Yeah.
paths that would otherwise not have been
Exactly.
there. Do you feel like is there pressure on you to one day run the business?
Everybody always says, oh, he's taking over the business, or like, they'll either say that about me or like one of my brothers, because we all 3 work for the company. I don't think there's necessarily pressure, because I diffuse the pressure right then and be like, no, I don't think I'm going to do it.
No.
You know, I've set it up. Everybody I talk to knows that I don't really want to stay in St. Louis. So
is there no fear of disappointment or
not necessarily.
Good.
My parents would never be disappointed in whatever I want to do. And that's one of the things I've always admired about my parents. They will support us no matter what we want to do. I mean, anything. I'm obviously studying abroad and traveling and go living out of the world or across the world for 8 months out of a year. They supported me, you know, do whatever you want. Or my brother, you know, moved to California and go to school, and then move to a different part of California, you know. And then, you know, if everything failed in my life, they would still be supportive and like never disappointed. So I don't know. I've always felt like my parents treat me and my brothers as like almost equals instead of like a child, or, you know, they've always been super supportive like that. So I've never really felt like I could ever disappoint them.
That's incredible to have.
Yeah.
What is the greatest lesson that your father has taught you, and what is the greatest lesson that your mother has taught you?
I think I already said my dad's earlier.
Yep.
Do what makes you happy. And then I guess from my mom, probably that she'll just do anything for me. Not in the, you know, in like a good, like, loving family way, not like, oh, she'll do anything for me, you know. You know, just like how important family is and what you should be doing for your family, you know, that you should be doing anything for the people you love.
Why should you be doing anything for the people that you love?
It's a good question. I don't know. Maintain relationships. I mean, you care about these people so deeply. I mean, wouldn't you want to do whatever it takes to keep them safe and happy? Isn't that what having relationships is kind of about, in a sense?
Absolutely. Do you want kids someday?
One day.
One day?
Yeah, not for a long time. Like 10 years at least.
Yeah, I'm with you, bro.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, my mom was 21 or 22 when she started having kids,
Yeah.
as in my brothers. And then my dad was maybe 27.
Mm.
And then like Taylor's dad was 43 and her mom was 37-ish,
No.
which is, it's a little higher risk when you're older. And like there's a lot of upsides and downsides, but they were both able to build their careers to a great point before having kids. And then there's downsides, like maybe they're a little bit older now. But personally, like I want to live my life before I start living my kids' lives. You know what I mean? Like I was put on this earth to be happy. That's what I feel like. It's subjective to everybody. And so I want to kind of achieve that a little bit before I put kids on this earth, So I want to do my traveling and stuff now, because when I have a kid, I won't be able to travel as much, or it'll be a bigger burden to travel. And, I want to be there for them and take care of them. But if I'm wanting to travel so bad right now, I need to get that out, and then I need to be in a financially stable position to where I can provide for my kids. So that means waiting.
Can happiness be taken away from you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you love your kids so much and then they die, I mean, that's happiness being taken away from you.
Is your happiness, if, God forbid, a child of yours dies, is your overall happiness taken away from you?
I mean, you can always get it back.
Okay.
I mean, of course, like you'll grieve, and that grieving process is different for everybody. It might be, it could be a week, but chances are, like for a lot of people, it's probably multiple months or years. I mean, losing a child's no joke. But you can always get the happiness back. It's all about how you process it and how you want to process it and how you want to move forward.
I've been thinking about happiness a lot, and I may be conflating the two, but I think of happiness and then I think of joy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think of joy, when I hear happiness, the way that I think of happiness is that, it can be taken away from you and it can be brought back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and I don't know exactly, I think that I want joy to be a joyful person where that can't be taken away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if when people are saying they want happiness in their life, if we're on the same page of, like, to me, joyful, they want to be a joyful person.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's some truth to that?
Yeah, like the differentiation between joy and
Mm-hmm.
happiness. Yeah, I definitely do. Like you may see someone who is joyful, and the way I'm kind of interpreting it is like you see someone who's joyful, like they're happy in whatever they do. They're always smiling, and they'll talk with a smile, be happy, make jokes and stuff. That's joyful, but they might not be happy at home. They might be depressed or something. So that they're joyful and not happy.
Okay, so we're just getting
flip flop.
We're flip flop.
Yes.
Yep.
That's how I would see it. Or like to me, like I could listen to music and music brings me joy, but I could be depressed, or someone in general. And also it could be vice versa. I might be completely happy, but it never shows because I just don't really smile. You know what I mean? So there is definitely a differentiation between the two.
There's this book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
I've heard of it, but I've not read it.
It's fucking awesome. I mean, that book really changed me in a lot of ways. And I actually started listening to it because Kendrick had sampled Eckhart Tolle on his most recent album.
Really?
Yeah. Have you listened to his most recent all the way through?
Many times.
Yeah. He goes, like, at times he'll have Eckhart and Mr. Duckworth. Yeah, that's the guy's voice. That's Eckhart Tolle.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, in his book, and I'm not going to do this justice, but it's an interesting concept of like things like joy and love. Normally everything is bound by the law of opposites. If you are happy, then you can also be sad.
Right.
But with joy and love, he says they're not bound by those laws. And I don't remember the exact reason he gives, but it's interesting to think about like those are the things that cannot be taken away. Like I am a loving person.
Mm-hmm.
Like I am a person filled with peace. I'm a person filled with love.
Right.
Gross. Glad I wasn't talking to a good looking lady there. I just spit all over the floor. Yeah, like I think, and I guess those are the things that to me are worth pursuing. Those things that aren't bound by the law of opposites.
Good point. Good concept.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept. You should check the book out.
Yeah.
What do you read?
Like I really like kind of like books that keep me really captivated. So like all the Dan Brown books I love.
What are those?
So The Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons. Have you read either of them?
I've only seen the Tom Hanks. I mean, all
the movies. But you see how the movies are. They're like action movies.
Yeah.
And the books are just as captivating. Like I'll finish them in a week or less. And like what's great about them is not only are they they're captivating, they want to keep me reading. They're historical. Not that all of it's true, but a lot of it is to an extent. Sometimes the core issue of the book isn't true, but a lot of the stuff surrounding it is.
True in the sense of historically accurate?
Yeah, historically accurate. Because he plays on history a lot and kind of adds his own like things in there. And that is super interesting. And also the questions he raises. So all of his books usually have something to do with religion, and kind of asking big questions or like themes of science versus religion, stuff like that. So I really enjoy that stuff because I find it interesting. So it's a nice mix of like keeps me captivated and it asks cool questions.
What is the overall encompassing theme of Dante's Inferno? What is the message that you should be getting from it?
So I've never read Dante's Inferno, but the book I'm reading about has a lot to do with it because I'm reading Inferno by Dan Brown right now.
Okay, so let's talk about Inferno.
So from what I know about Inferno, it's like one piece of his comedy that he wrote. There's the Inferno, Purgatory, and then I think Heaven or something. So I'm pretty sure the idea Dante puts forward in his book or his comedy, the Inferno section at least, is like you have to go through Inferno to reach Purgatory and then Heaven. So you kind of have to endure hell to get to heaven. And I think that's what Dante is trying to say. But again, I haven't actually read it or like looked into it or studied it. But I think that's the main gist.
What lesson can we take away from that in our practical lives?
You can't have joy without suffering. I mean, I think you can. Like, you could have a completely like tame life and you never had anything hard or difficult happen to you and you still might be joy, but you never had to suffer or anything. But I think like with that point, you can't really, I've always been told you can't really have joy without pain, basically because you won't really know which is which if with the absence of the other. So I think that's part of it. You kind of have to know what it's like to know what it's like.
You have to understand suffering in order to understand joy.
Right.
And if you don't understand joy, how can you be joyful? Is that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
I've never suffered in the sense that I've never been in a bad accident and lost a limb and stuff like that, where some people have, I've suffered in the sense that like I've been sad or something, you know what I mean? And that's just like how privileged, our lives can be here. But it's still, in our own form, it's still suffering that we are able to compare to other things,
Yeah, because you're very poised and you have, I would say, a more wisdom than, most people our age. Yeah, you're suffering in sadness. So would you say that was enough suffering to get you to a point of being who you are now?
Yeah, I would definitely say that. I mean, I think everything I've endured has pushed me to do the things that make me what I am now.
Yes, the suffering concept is so interesting to me because there was a woman who was a concentration camp survivor, and then I think Viktor Frankl, who was a logotherapist with like Man's Search. He wrote Man's Search for Meaning and a few other books. And logotherapy is like if you can find a meaning in life, then you can start to heal yourself. But anyway, so it's interesting. Like suffering is subjective, right? Because there are concentration camp survivors who might go out into the world, and then if the traffic is, slow or something, they might still complain about it, right? And you would think, okay, they've gone through this. How can I or anyone ever complain about anything in our lives, right? And we look at the Kardashians complaining about something and we mock it and we say, how can you possibly complain about anything? But I think in a sense, suffering is absolutely subjective. To them, those are real emotions.
Mhm.
Emotions that they have, that you have, are real,
Oh yeah.
no matter what.
That's why I think comparing suffering is useless. I mean, it does nothing. I don't know if you agree or not, but like, you might complain, oh, I'm like really hungry. And they're like, oh, there's like kids in Africa starving. Fuck does it have to do with me? I'm still hungry. Like, that doesn't make me less hungry,
Right.
You're not doing anything by telling me,
I completely agree. It makes the argument of who, yeah, because you can't decide, okay, this person has suffered the most, so we should make the most exceptions for them because they have suffered the most.
Mm-hmm.
You can't ever calculate that.
Right.
So how can we, why are we deciding, right? I think it's relevant to our society now. I won't get into specific issues necessarily, but yeah, that's the way our society is. No, I actually have suffered the most. No, I actually have suffered the most.
It's all big competition.
Yeah, it's a big...
When you're comparing, like I said, apples to oranges,
right?
You cannot compare that stuff.
Let's measure who has the more fucked up dick, right?
Yeah.
We're dick measuring our fucked dicks. Yeah, it's like, yeah, I think that's it. If you can't compare suffering, then it's equal opportunity that we should be searching for, not equal outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're basing those equal outcomes on who has suffered the most.
Right.
And this person's have suffered a little bit more than this person, and this person has suffered a little bit more than this person. And so, yeah, I think equal outcomes is just a ridiculous concept when you frame it under those sufferings.
Right.
I didn't know we're going to go down this route, to be honest.
No, I'm happy we did because this stuff's interesting. I had no expectations coming into this.
I didn't either. I took like a 10-minute nap before this, and I think I'm going to start doing that every time now because this is, and you're an easy person to talk to.
Yeah,
it's easy to keep conversation going.
Mm-hmm. I was a little nervous because like I've never been much of a talker, so I'm trying to like think and really talk.
You're working harder right now to speak?
A little bit. I'm just kind of generally a quiet person, and sometimes conversations, like especially like deep ones, sometimes I really have to like think before I talk, and like sometimes that thinking can take like a couple minutes or, God forbid, a couple days. Like I need to think about it before I talk. So sometimes like having it flow so smoothly takes a little bit of work.
Yeah, I like the way that you characterize that. What is the deepest conversation you've ever had?
I don't know. Me and Taylor have deep conversations often. I can't think of a specific one.
What's the vague outline of those? Or
They're always different. Usually it might just be analyzing the things that make us who we are, or like things that happened to us as a child and how that's affecting us now and today. Basically therapist shit. I don't think I'll ever need a therapist because like we do a perfect job with each other, like figuring that stuff out and working it out. Like I found out things I never thought I'd figure out just by, staying up and talking. So
that's fucking cool.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool, man?
Yeah, it's really cool. And a lot of people don't have that, I guess, so I'm pretty blessed.
I've got a buddy of mine, and he invited me to this event with these just fucking like ridiculously intelligent people and successful people, and that exposed so much insecurity in me. It was unreal. But a great takeaway I had from it that I'm intentionally trying to focus on now is if you picture a large circle, and whatever those rings are, that in the center is like the deepest you can get, and on the outside is the surface. If you think about the Earth's surface and then the inner core, and let's say there's 5 levels, 4 levels, whatever it may be, most of our conversations, probably 95% of our conversations, are around that first surface. And then you can find someone that you connect with, like Taylor, and then now you can go down to the surface level too.
Yeah.
But I think to take it all the way back to like what you admire about the details in each of the mountains, we don't have enough details in our life that allow us to get to level 3 or level 4 or level 5.
Yeah.
And we're missing out so much on what we could understand and what we could solve if we could get to that deeper point.
Yeah.
I don't know how to get there.
I mean, in a sense, I mean, I feel like our conversations here have gotten really deep. We're definitely on surface 2 or 3. You know,
right.
We're in there.
Right.
How much further do you think there is? I mean, do you think it's level 5, a level 10?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I feel like we've gotten pretty deep. I mean, I don't have these deep conversations with almost anybody, but like Taylor and maybe a couple of, maybe some people like once or twice, but like on a regular basis, I don't really have these conversations much. So that's why I enjoy this so much too.
Yeah, me too. That's it. It's and it's kind of like I was trying to compare it to something, but like once you break through that, it's almost sad because some of these surface level conversations I like get tired of more quickly, and so I can't have as many relationships with people, and I bet you feel the same way about this, but those were semi-surface level relationships in the first place.
It's hard to want to keep those relationships like if you start looking into it, like, we might not have anything in common, we don't really have these deep conversations, like, why are we still friends, but we're still friends with, I mean, I still try to be friends with them, and I still am friends with people like that. Because I mean, there's nothing really wrong with having surface level friends,
Totally.
You could like be really into it and think like that you shouldn't have those friends, but like there is really, I've kind of realized there's nothing wrong with having those friends.
Totally, man. I've got friends that I have like that I would, sacrifice my life for, right? And they would sacrifice their lives for me, and we're on that surface level.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't think it's something to look down upon.
Right.
I guess it was just an observation, but absolutely, man. Like, yeah. Definitely. Would you say, do you have friends in your life that have, maybe past friends or friends from when you were in high school or younger that have said, you've changed, Ricky, in a negative sense?
I don't think I have any of those, honestly.
That's great.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't think I've ever changed negatively. I've definitely I've been on the other end of the stick. I feel like I've had friends where I don't really want to be friends with you anymore because you've changed, or, you've become something that I'm not a fan of anymore. So
on a character level?
Yes.
Do you think this is curious because I've been having a thought. Do you think it's that they've changed or that you have changed and now you're able to recognize things that you otherwise would not have been able to notice?
I think I could think of situations of both.
Both?
Right. Both of them were much longer ago, a couple years, to 6 years ago. One of them I can think of one situation, like maybe I didn't know this person as well as I thought I did, and then I realized I didn't like them. So in that case, they didn't change. I just didn't really know them as well as I thought. And then there's this person changed drastically over the time that I know them, and I don't want to be friends with them. So that's the other example in my head. And then the third example, I've grown and can now see things I don't like, so I don't want to be friends, or we shouldn't be friends anymore. So I think there's a lot of different reasons. It's not always just because that person changed, So yeah, to your point, it can be that I've changed and seen different things or learned more. Or maybe neither of us changed, like the first example. They haven't changed, I haven't changed, I'm just learning more about you.
Yeah, to the point of you changing and then recognizing certain things in people. It's almost, I don't know if this is true or not, this is just the thought I have. In order for you to change, to recognize that, you have to step out of your comfort zone and be fearful of something and do it. And absolutely. That is what gives you that wisdom to open up and see things from a new perspective. What's next for Ricky Schaper?
The next big thing is obviously getting married, so that'll be next September. So I got a year and a half. Got plenty of time, but in the meantime, all the travel money has to go towards like the wedding. So there's not as much going on in the next year and a half. There's definitely going to be some traveling, but not any serious traveling like I've done the past year.
Right.
I've gone on like 3 2-week trips. So that won't be happening. So after the wedding, then it's as much travel as possible, whatever I can do. But definitely like work's a big part of my life. Obviously it's the family business, Dogtown Pizza. So that's always got big things happening, new chains growing, new equipment, new processes and stuff. So that's always really exciting for me. It doesn't always feel like a job because I've been doing it,
that's awesome,
for so long, and I love it. But so yeah, I always say like the biggest things that are happening with me, it's usually travel or work, or big things aren't really happening with music right now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and those ebb and flow. Like at some point in time, music will be.
there's definitely been times where like I don't play guitar much for a couple months, and then like now I'm trying to play a couple hours every day because I'm so into it right now. It just all depends how busy I am at work, or it just all depends. Like right now, I've actually been having Fridays off of work, so it's Monday to Thursday. Basically because we've become really efficient for our own good. But it's all temporary because we're getting a lot more stores and chains in the next few months. So, but having this Friday off is great. It's more time for catch up on sleep, play guitar. I do deliveries, like Uber Eats deliveries, just to make a little extra money when I can, and that's kind of my fun money. Just extra time to do whatever I want. It's great.
Fantastic. I've got one more thing for you, Ricky. I've got a question. I've got to run into the other room.
Okay. All right.
Oh, wait. Sorry.
All right, I do these. Have you seen any of the end of the podcast?
I don't know.
So I do these. These are Project Spark cards from the YouTube channel Yes Theory. Are you familiar with them?
I've watched them before.
Okay.
I don't subscribe to them.
They're right up your. They are so up your alley of travel and stepping out of comfort zones.
We can do some rapid fire questions.
We'll do one.
Okay.
We'll do one because these are deeper questions. So, you saw how terrible of a shuffling that was. You play poker?
I do. I like Texas Hold'em.
We should have a poker night sometime.
Oh, I'm about it.
Awesome.
I love it.
Deal.
I got a set at home, but
perfect.
I'm pretty decent with cards. I don't know if you've ever.
I've seen you actually maneuvering them quite a bit. All right, go ahead and read that question out loud, and then I'll have you answer it.
What have you talked about doing for a long time, but you haven't yet acted on? There's definitely things. Most of the things that I try to tick everything off of a list. Like I've always said, I'm gonna do this. I try to always say what I'm gonna do. So right now, I don't know if there's much. Like I always said growing up, I'm gonna travel, and I did. I made it happen, and I continue to make it happen. Learning how to cook. I didn't really know how to cook, and like a million YouTube videos later, I'm pretty good at cooking. I can cook almost anything now. Even like the gym, or I'd say like getting into like calisthenics and bodyweight stuff. I always said I wanted to do it, and I never did it, and I finally did it last year, like fully, like kind of dropped the weights for the most part. But right now, there's not a lot of things I could think of. Maybe like learning how to do like coding, which I've actually just recently kind of started because I found a spot where it could fit into my job. So I'm like, okay, I'll just start an online course, and I just started it this week.
Oh, nice.
So I don't know how long it's going to last, or if I'll like it as much as I thought I could, or if it'll even do what I want to do, which is why I'm learning it. So honestly, there's not a lot because I try to stay on top of that because I don't ever want to be the type of person that says I want to do this and then never do it,
What is a goal that you could set for yourself that scares you?
Visit every country in the world. I think that's pretty scary. I mean, that's so much traveling. I mean, it's exhausting, and people don't know like how exhausting it really is, and like mentally exhausting too, how hard it is, and all the bad things that can happen. So that's, I think, a big goal that's scary. I don't know. It's a good question.
I like it.
I think like as a musician, every musician's goal is to want to like go on tour and stuff. So like that might be a goal, like be a famous musician and go on tour. But like that's terrifying, like because that level of like touring like takes a huge toll. Man. The traveling. First of all, it's combining travel and music, which I think would be awesome. But like it's exhausting traveling that much every single day, a new city, or maybe you get a 1-day break. Or if it's in the U.S., you're driving the entire way. It's going to be exhausting. And then like the music aspect, I mean, I can't imagine not burning out quick, So it's like, that's scary to me because my passion becoming my work might just seem, I don't want it to ruin my passion a little bit.
Yeah, that's a scary thought, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a really scary thought for me.
Ricky?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I had a great time.
Awesome. And we will roll credits.